Hello, welcome to Gurukul's CAT 100 series, a series that's designed specifically to take you from your study room to the corporate boardroom. I am Prady Sharma and this is Verbal Mastery with Prady. So welcome back to another video. Now this is your passage for today. In case you want to take this up as a test, then all you've got to do is go on to www.thegurukul.org.in. There you'll find a login button, on clicking which you'd be redirected to a sign up, and you've got to sign up to the 100 days to CAT test series. Now this is a free test series which has been specifically designed to help you consistently practice quant, LR and verbal ability till your CAT 2025 and ace it in your first attempt. Now without any further ado, let's get into the passage and questions. Now this is your first paragraph. Pause the video here, jot down all the main points, and then we'll go into the second paragraph. This is your second paragraph. Pause the video here, jot down all the main points, and then we'll go into the third paragraph. This is your third and the last paragraph. Pause the video here, jot down all the main points, and then we'll go into the questions. This is your question number 1. Pause the video here, answer this question, and then we'll go on to the second question. This is your question number 2. Pause the video here, answer this question, and then we'll move on to the third question. This is your third question, guys. Pause the video here, answer this question, and then we'll move on to the last question of this passage. Now this is the last question of this passage, guys. Pause the video here, answer this question, and then we'll go into the passage and question explanations. What does the first passage really talk about? During most of the 19th century, many French women continued to be educated according to models long established by custom and religious traditions. That means what? During most of the 19th century, these women, a lot of French women, they were continually being educated about the traditional, according to the religious curriculum that was there initially, there was no change. One recent observer has termed the failure to institute real and lasting educational reform at the end of 18th century a missed opportunity, for in spite the egalitarian and secular aims of the French Revolution in 1789, a truly non-discriminatory education system for both men and women would not be established in the country until the 1880s. So, although there was this French Revolution which was based on egalitarian and secular aims. So what is egalitarian? Based on equal rights, based on the principle of equal rights. So although the French Revolution was based on equality and secularity, the people of the government, French government, could not establish an egalitarian education system for both men and women, for both the sexes, which is what they are terming as a missed opportunity. However, legislatures had put forth many proposals for educational reform in these years just after the revolution. Two in particular attempted to institute educational systems for women that were to a great extent egalitarian, that means based on equal principles. So what is the author also telling? The author is also telling that there were legislatures, there were lawmakers who tried to bring in two proposals. These two proposals were somewhat equal or somewhat based on the principles of equality, which focused on the education for women. The first of these proposals endeavored to replace the predominantly religious education that women originally received at convents and at home with reformed curricula. That means the first proposal. So after French Revolution, there were two proposals. The first proposal, what did this first proposal try to do? This first proposal tried to replace, religious learning, of women. With what? With a reformed curricula, with some kind of a changed curriculum. So changed syllabus I will write, That's a better way to understand it. More importantly, the proposal insisted that because education was a common good, that it should be offered to both sexes, instruction should be available to everyone by the same token, that means by the same logic, teachers would be drawn from both the sexes. So this first proposal basically argued that since education is a common good, that means it needs to benefit both the sexes in the society, it should be that teachers also be drawn from both the sexes, that means there should be male teachers and the women teachers as well. Thus the proposal held it essential that schools for both men and women be established promptly throughout the country, and that these schools be public, a tangible sign of the state's interest in all of its citizens. So what did he say that? So here he said that in that proposal, we need to make schools, or we need to establish schools, we need to start schools which cater to both men and women, and throughout the country, and that should be the state-run schools, so that it shows that the state, the country is actually invested, or the government is invested in the returns to the society, or returns to the people in the country. One limitation of this proposal, so there's some kind of a drawback to this proposal also. One limitation of this proposal, however, was that girls, unlike boys, were to leave school at the age of 8 in order to be educated at home in the skills necessary for domestic life and for the raising of families. So one major, I don't think this is a small limitation, but one major drawback was that this first proposal said that, okay, there should be schools for both boys and girls, okay, and both of them should get equal education. That should be the state-sponsored education, because state cares for all its people. But girls should drop out at 8. Girls should stop coming to these schools at the age of 8. Why? Because they have to start taking, extra lessons at home regarding how to raise families and how to do domestic work. That's very stupid, okay. The second proposal took a more comprehensive approach. So this was a broader one, okay. It advocated equal education for women and men on the grounds that women and men enjoy the same rights, and it was the only proposal of the time that called for co-educational schools. So here there should be men's schools, women's schools, but here they are talking about co-educational schools, which were presented as a bulwark. What is this bulwark? What is the meaning of the word bulwark? Bulwark is kind of a defense against something. Okay, so what's he saying? At that time, this was called as the bulwark against the traditional gender roles enforced by religious tradition. In other respects, however, this proposal also continued to define women in terms of their roles in the domestic sphere as mothers. So this was one step ahead of the previous proposal, wherein in this proposal they're saying that we should have co-educational schools. Women and men enjoy the same rights, so they should get the same education. But apart from that, they also focused on the traditional roles or traditional gender roles of women as mothers. Okay. Now what does the third paragraph talk to us about? That neither proposal was able to envision a system of education that was fully equal for women, and that neither was adopted into law even as such, bespeaks the immensity of the cultural and political obstacles that egalitarian education for women at that time. So what does it say? It says that, okay, both of these things could not actually focus on the actual equal education for women, both these proposals, and they could not even be put into the law. That means they didn't actually come into the fruition. They didn't actually happen. This shows that there was a very big cultural and political difference in what we have seen at that time for the rights of women. Okay. Now, nevertheless, the vision of egalitarian education reform was not entirely lost. That means it did not get lost completely. Nearly a century later, in the early 1880s, French legislator recalled the earlier proposals in the justification of new laws that founded public secondary schools for women, abolished fees for education, and established compulsory attendance for all students. So maybe after a century, almost a century, in 1880s, these lawmakers, they came up with this they came up with a proposal, and that proposal was based on the earlier proposals. Okay, just to gain some kind of a backing, and in that they made sure that the secondary schools for women were built. They made sure that fees was taken off, there was no fees, and compulsory attendance was there for all the students. In order to pass these reforms, the government needed to demonstrate that its new standards were rooted in a long philosophical, political, and pedagogical tradition. So this means that the government, whichever the new government was in 1880s, they made sure that they needed the support of the old bills, they needed the support of the old proposals in order for them to justify how these new standards are going and how the new schools were built. Various of these resulting institutions also made claim to the revolutionary origin, as doing so evolved them to appropriate the legitimacy conferred by tradition and historical continuity. So what do we understand from this? A lot of these lawmakers and the resulting institutions, that means the new schools, also made claim to revolutionary origin. That means they also showed that they're very, very modernized, they're very, very revolutionized. Okay, so this allowed them to get the legitimacy, that means get the validation that was conferred by tradition and historical continuity. So from historical times till now, they have revolutionized the system and they have continued the traditions, is what they were telling. Now that we've understood the passage, let's get into the questions. So the first question: it can be inferred from the passage that French legislatures who passed the new educational laws in early 1880s were. So what can we understand about the French legislatures who passed the new laws? A. Committed to removing education in the skills necessary for domestic life from the public school curriculum? Absolutely not. They were not committed to removing education in the skills. So this is an opposite answer, so I can definitely remove this. B. Unaware of the difficulties that the earlier legislatures faced when advocating similar legislation. So when we are talking about the legislatures who passed these laws in 1880s, they were aware of the problems that the earlier legislatures faced because they used their proposals, right? So again, this also becomes an opposite answer. We can remove this. Concerned with improving education equalities across economic strata as well as between the sexes, definitely, which is why they went ahead and they tried to build schools. In fact, they actually got secondary schools. And how can I even justify this point about economic strata? I can justify this because he said that there's been fee that's been abolished. The fee has been taken off. That means all the people, no matter if you're poor or rich, you should be able to get education, because that's the right of everyone, right? So this seems like a very good answer. Now D, more open to political compromise than the legislatures who introduced the previous proposals for reform. Now this is a very long stretched assumption, and this does not really come from the passage at all. So I can remove this. The best possible answer for me becomes C. Now if we go to the second question, suppose that two proposals were put forward by lawmakers concerning housing reform today. Which one of the following pairs of proposals is most closely analogous to the pair of proposals discussed in the second paragraph of the passage? Now, the proposals which were discussed, the first proposal was that everyone should have it, right? Everyone should have education. That was one. And the second proposal, that it should be non-discriminatory. That is the second part. Right, so we have to see out of these four, which ones are really close or similar to the previous ones. Housing should be made available to all. Real estate practices should be non-discriminatory. Yes, it should be available to all. That means everyone should have it, and it should be non-discriminatory. It directly comes. So A seems like a very good answer. Now, if we are talking about B, housing should be made available to all. So far this is okay for me about the proposal one, but the quality of housing should be improved. But we didn't talk about the quality of education anywhere in the second proposal, right? So this cannot be the one. There should be housing for all who can pay. Now, the moment I say there should be housing for all who can pay, that becomes non-discriminatory, right? It's not non-discriminatory. So immediately I can remove this. And D, the quality of housing should be improved. Real estate practices should be non-discriminatory. So the second part is okay, but the first one focuses on quality, and we've not focused on quality anywhere in the previous proposals. So I can remove this as well. So the best possible answer for me now becomes A. Now when we're looking at the third one, according to the passage, the second of the two proposals discussed was distinctive because it asserted that. So the second of the two proposals basically talked about, co-education and all. So let's look at that kind of an answer. Everyone should both learn and teach. Now see, there never came that everyone should both learn and teach. Both sexes, if they are learning, the pool of teachers should come from both sexes. So this cannot be my answer. Males and females should go to the same school. So this is about co-education. So definitely I can consider this to be one of my answers. Education should involve lifelong learning. Now again, this lifelong learning never came in the second proposal either. They also said that domestic works and all should be learned, so they have to come out of school sometime. So this can be removed. Religious schools should be abolished. This has not been spoken at all in both the proposals. So I can remove this as well. So the best possible answer for me becomes B. Let's go to the next question. The author would most likely describe the proposals mentioned in the passage with which one of the following statements? So what could be that one statement that the author uses for the proposals that have been described in the passage? Now the first A says they espoused reforms that were very modest by standards of the day. So they didn't propose reforms which were like modest by the standards of the day, right? So obviously, see, modest means somewhat of shy, okay, something that's not really revealing everything. So obviously this cannot be my answer. They were fundamentally unethical due to their incomplete view of equality. Again, the author will not directly say that they're unethical, because he said that yes, we've used this to pass something else later on. So I can remove this as well. They were well-meaning attempts to do as much as was feasible at that time, obviously. So keeping historical perspectives in mind, the author would agree that yes, for that time, for how the cultural and political situations were then, okay, this was a good attempt. They meant well, but it didn't happen. That's a secondary issue. So this could be one of my answers. D, they were reasonable and it's difficult to understand why they failed. No, it's not difficult to understand why they failed. We very clearly saw that religion, culture and politics were the reasons why they failed. So this will not be our answer, and the best possible answer for us will become C. If you've stayed till here, please drop a like, because that motivates us to keep bringing new videos like this for you every single day and help you stay consistent with your CAT 2025 prep. Share this with a friend who is also preparing for CAT 2025 but does not get the daily dose of quant, LRDI or verbal to keep him active. I'll see you in the next one.
Hope you enjoyed learning from today's session.
This series is designed to help you with your CAT preparation and practice daily. We are with you in this journey.
To watch the next video, click here. And to watch Gurukul's CAT 100 series, study room to boardroom, the entire playlist, click here.
If you learned from today's session, like, share, and subscribe.